Hello, welcome to Simracing Corner. But before we dive into the video, I just want to take the opportunity to say, if you find this video useful, please hit the like to support the channel and consider subscribing if you find this type of content helpful. This is what we do at Simracing Corner, accessible reviews and guides for sim racers along with sim racing videos. So that's just a quick introduction for first time visitors, and check out the homepage for our complete channel content list. Okay, so let's proceed on to our subject. Opentrack is a free open source head tracking application that works with games that have track IR support, which are many, so sim racing titles, flight sims, and even Elite Dangerous. There's plenty of games out there that will work with this. Opentrack supports many different inputs, including the one we're using today, which is the Aruco Paper Marker Tracker. Aruco markers were originally invented for augmented reality, but for our application, the Aruco marker will be head mounted and a webcam will track movement of the marker that's then translated into positional head tracking within the game. So we need three things to get started here. The Opentrack software, number one. Number two, one of these printed markers, which you print out yourself. And number three is your own webcam. That's simple enough. In this video, we're combining a quick start guide and a review of the capability of this head tracking solution. Check the video description for download links if you want to do this yourself. For the webcam, I'm using the PlayStation 3 iCamera. You can use any webcam, but the PlayStation camera can capture up to 75 frames per second, and this will improve the head tracking performance, so it's worth knowing. First things first, we need to print out the Aruco marker. Download link is in the video description. It's just a simple graphic. We need to then cut it out. Make sure when cutting out, you leave a white border around the printed area of no less than 1 centimetre. Then attach it to some stiff cardboard like this, as we want the marker to remain flat and be a base to attach this assembly to. There wasn't any details in the instructions on how large the marker needs to be printed, so I've prepared 3 Aruco markers at different sizes to test how well they perform. So we have this piece of card and we need to attach it to a suitable head mount. You could use a hat or cap. Another option is a GoPro head strap, and with a dollop or two of blue tack, the card mounted Aruco print sticks in place really well. Or you could 3D print this special headphone mount designed for this very purpose. I have a 3D printer, so I took advantage of printing one myself. There's a link in the description if you want to download this model yourself. Now we'll head over to Opentrack to set up the application. And it's really easy. So first off, select Aruco from the input list. On the right, still under input, click the hammer icon to open the tracker settings menu. If you're using a PlayStation 3 iCamera, as I am, change the frames per second to 75 here. And that's all you need to do. Click OK to close the window once you've done that. Next, underneath input is output, and that should be set to free track. Free track is the track IR emulation. Below that are the filters. There's 3 different filters under this menu. I chose the Kalman filter. That one worked great for me. The filters are designed to help smooth out tracking issues. Hopefully that filter should work for you as well. If not, you need to play around with these and choose a different filter and maybe adjust the settings. If you hit up the Opentrack wiki page, you'll find more details on the filters. For our next step, on the right hand side, hit the options button. Under the shortcuts tab shown here, you need to at least map the center shortcut. You can bind that to a keystroke or button on your wheel or button box. Center will reset the view, so when you're sitting in the car, look straight ahead and press center, and you'll be fine for the duration of your session. Now click over to the output tab. The output relates to the different positional head tracking motions being sent to the game. The default is 6 degrees of freedom. We're just using yaw and pitch, which is left and right and up and down panning head movement tracking. This was partly my preference and it not working exceptionally well with the 6 degrees of freedom in F1 2018. These can be tuned under the mapping menu off the main window, but I didn't dive into that. I was perfectly content with running with 2 degrees of freedom head tracking, but you can test these all out for yourself and see how you get on. Okay, that's all the settings I'm using for the demonstrations that will be coming up in a few moments. It's not complicated at all. We're ready to begin, so click the start button and it should kick into life and start working. A couple of things to note. We're using a webcam, so lighting conditions will affect the tracking ability. Too much glare from the sun will bleach out the picture, and too little light will also reduce performance as well. Use the preview in Opentrack and you can see the red outline drawn around the marker that indicates Opentrack is successfully tracking. The other thing is, the marker should be angled when facing the camera. If it's too flush facing, it will reduce tracking accuracy, and I'll show you how this can be a problem later if it's not angled sufficiently when facing the camera. Now we'll head over to the track and test the head tracking using the 3 different size markers we printed earlier. The first part of the test is sitting in the garage, moving my head around to see how quickly the head tracking is working and general accuracy. I chose this recording angle as it perfectly illustrates my head movements and how they are being translated into the game in real time. This is the large marker and mounted to the GoPro head strap. It's quite comfortable and you can still use headphones without it colliding with the marker. So this is a very practical way to use the Aruco Marker. Now we're on the track in F1 2018. We're going to run a single lap and you can examine how I'm making use of the head tracking while cornering and looking around for increased awareness of the surroundings, which would have been previously limited by the fixed field of view of my monitor. From my point of view, the head tracking is performing exceptionally well. It felt lag-free and accurate. I was able to move my head around rapidly and it was perfectly mirrored in the game view. The tracking was completely stable throughout and I didn't need to reset my view at any point. I must admit, I'm totally surprised on how well this is working. The setup process was easy and it just worked straight away. Of course, having this billboard strapped to your head may be off-putting if you're watching this video, but honestly, it's not in the way. It's just a light piece of card that you'll forget it's there while racing. So don't be put off by what is a bit of a ridiculous look. It's not an encumbrance. I finished commentating on this particular test. There's about 30 seconds left on this lap. But if you want to skip forward to the next test demonstrating the medium-sized marker, there's timestamps in the video description. This is the medium-sized Aruco Marker and we're back in the garage. The tracking was working fine here, so we'll take it straight to the track for another lap around Spa. Using this medium-sized marker seemingly had no disadvantage compared to the larger printed version. It was tracking with complete accuracy in this test run, which was awesome. I can't really add any further observations, it just worked great, and it tells us that you don't actually need that really large Aruco marker for good tracking while using Opentrack. Again, you can watch the lap complete or skip ahead using the timestamp in the video description for the final test using the small printed tracker. So really, when this works so great, I think this is as good as you'll need. And this is the final test using the small printed Aruco Marker, this time mounted to my headphones with the 3D printed attachment. And you can immediately see we're having some serious issues with the tracking. It's flickering around and not usable at all. So my initial thought was this print was just too small to be usable. But in fact, that wasn't the problem. It took me a while to work it out, but it wasn't the size of the print, it was the angle to the camera. The marker is mounted higher up with this mount and being presented to the camera virtually straight on, and that was the actual problem. And I mentioned this earlier in the video that the marker needs to be angled to the camera. And this was the solution. I reheated the plastic mount, bent it back to give it some angle, and it began working normally. And you can see things working now perfectly well. I have to say, even this small tracker is doing as good a job as the larger printed Aruco trackers, and that's quite amazing. Also, with it mounted to my headset, it's tidy and out of the way. And if you don't have a 3D printer, I'm sure you can find a easy solution to mount a piece of card to your headphone strap without that much trouble, as this is definitely the best way to mount it. Okay, let's move on to the summary and some final words. Actions speak louder than words, and the video demonstrations today were clear evidence of how accurate and quick the tracking is using the Aruco Marker. It's quite incredible, and I had no idea it was going to function as good as this. And it costs next to nothing and very easy to set up. For a budget head tracking solution, it's perfect. If you're curious about head tracking but put off by the high price of entry for a track IR, use this, easy answer. And I know some people who've spent money on a track IR just don't get on with head tracking in general and find it more difficult to drive with and are just left disappointed. But for some other people it's an essential aid and they can't drive without it. So if you want to find out for yourself which side of the fence you sit on, here you go. If you've used VR in the past, I'm sure you'll find this easy to adapt to. For anyone else, it may take a little while to get comfortable with. For me, head tracking adds an immersive quality to sim racing and a useful driving aid, particularly sharp blind corners that are impossible to see clearly on a fixed monitor view. Speare has a couple of good examples, which is why I chose this track for all my head tracking tests. Also, F1 2018 is super fast, and you'll need good quick head tracking to navigate the track, so that's the other reason for testing in this game. If you try this head tracking for yourself, please drop a line in the comments to let me know how you get on. I'd be really interested to know what you think. We're going to end things here. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe if you haven't done so already. Thanks for watching, and check back soon for more videos on the Sim Racing Corner YouTube channel. Okay, so that's it. Happy simming, and I'll catch you in the next one. Bye bye for now.